She never imagined her life would collapse in a single evening, but that was what happened to Alara the night her engagement was cancelled. She had spent years with Adrian, a man she believed was her forever, yet all it took was one confession, a single breathless admission that he was in love with someone else, and the life she thought she was walking toward vanished in front of her like smoke. Her wedding dress still hung inside her wardrobe untouched, her invitations stacked on the dresser unopened, the ring on her finger felt like a shackle rather than a promise. The shame, the pitying looks from neighbors and relatives, the whispers of how she must not have been enough suffocated her. She wanted to escape from everything, and when her father suggested she travel to her aunt's countryside home for some rest, she agreed. She packed quickly, leaving behind the city that carried the scent of betrayal. In the village, life was different, slower and quieter, yet even here whispers traveled fast. The young woman who had been left by her fiancé, everyone knew and everyone pitied her. Alara could not stand it, so one evening, restless, she walked out into the chilly dusk. The fields stretched wide and empty, and it was there she met him. He was standing by an old fence, repairing it with rough, steady hands. His clothes were simple, worn with work, his hair slightly unkempt, his face shadowed by stubble. He looked up at her with eyes that startled her, calm, steady eyes, the color of stormy skies. He nodded politely without words. She almost passed, but something about him held her still. "You are not from here," he finally said, his voice deep, steady. She shook her head. "Just visiting. My aunt needed a change of air." He studied her a moment, then gave a half smile. "This village is good for that. No one asks too many questions unless they already know the answers." His name was Rowan, a man the villagers described as poor and wandering. He lived in a small cottage at the edge of the woods, worked odd jobs around the fields and farms, never asking for more than he needed. The people called him strange, too private, too mysterious, but never unkind. He became a quiet presence in Alara's days, appearing in fields and markets by the riverside. She tried to ignore the warmth that began to creep into her whenever he was near. Her aunt teased her gently, "You keep finding reasons to cross paths with him, Alara," but Alara denied it. She was still broken, her heart still carried the scars of Adrian. She was not ready for anything yet. Somehow Rowan made her feel seen, not as the abandoned fiancé, not as the pitiful girl, but simply as herself. One evening, rain poured heavily, the streets were slick, and Alara found herself hurrying home, but the storm caught her. The wind pulled her umbrella away. She was drenched, shivering, when suddenly Rowan appeared from the mist, offering his coat. It was rough, smelling faintly of earth and smoke, but it warmed her more than she could admit. He walked her to her aunt's door in silence, yet when she thanked him, his eyes lingered a little too long on her face, and her chest fluttered painfully. Days bled into weeks. Her stay at the countryside, meant to be brief, stretched longer. Her aunt was delighted, but Alara knew deep inside it was Rowan who held her back from leaving. Though he owned little, he spoke with wisdom and depth. Sometimes when he thought she was not listening, she heard him humming soft melodies under his breath, songs that did not belong to a poor wanderer but to someone who had seen distant worlds. She wondered about him endlessly. One night, as the moon hung heavy over the fields, her aunt spoke quietly while mending clothes. "Alara dear, you know people talk, they say Rowan is poor and rootless, but I see the way he looks at you, and I see the way you soften near him. Are you certain you wish to ignore that?" Alara flushed. She shook her head. "It is foolish. I hardly know him. Besides, after what happened with Adrian, the first cannot possibly rush into something." But her aunt only smiled. "Sometimes love does not come when you plan it. Sometimes it simply chooses you." The next morning, Alara found Rowan waiting near the old well. He looked restless, his usual calm shaken. When he saw her, he asked without preamble, "Will you walk with me?" She agreed, and together they walked until they reached the quiet grove by the woods. There, beneath the shadows, he spoke. "I know what people say about me, that I am poor, that I wander, but I must ask you something, Alara. When you look at me, what do you see?" She hesitated, her heart pounding. "I see someone who is kind, someone who does not ask for more than he needs, someone who makes me feel like myself again." He closed his eyes briefly, as though the words both pained and soothed him. Then he looked at her with a fire she had not seen before. "Then marry me, Alara," he said, not grandly, not on bended knee, just simple, direct. "Marry me." Her breath caught. She thought he must be mad. She laughed softly at first, then saw his face steady, unwavering. Rowan, she whispered, you cannot be serious. We barely know each other. You have nothing, no family, no wealth. I have already been ruined by one broken promise. How could I possibly bind myself again? Rowan only said quietly, because I will never break you, because I will never lie to you. Something inside her fractured, then healed at once. The honesty in his words seared her. She had nothing left to lose. She was already broken, yet perhaps this stranger who carried nothing but sincerity could be the one to help her live again, against reason, against fear. She nodded. And so it happened quietly, with no fanfare, in a small chapel at the edge of the village. Alara and Rowan became husband and wife. Her aunt stood as witness. The priest spoke blessings. The villagers whispered in shock. How could the girl from the city, who had once been promised to a wealthy man, now bind herself to a poor wanderer? But Alara no longer cared. She looked at Rowan and saw not poverty but truth. The early days of their marriage were simple. They lived in his cottage, small and humble but filled with warmth. Rowan worked tirelessly, bringing her fresh bread, fixing broken fences, finding joy in the smallest things. Alara learned to laugh again. Her wounds from Adrian began to fade. She found herself falling deeper each day into the mystery of the man she had chosen. Yet even as love grew inside her, questions lingered. Rowan disappeared at odd hours, sometimes for days. He never spoke of his past, never spoke of where he came from or why he chose this village. She sensed a hidden weight in him, one he could not share. Sometimes when he thought she slept, she caught him staring at the ceiling, his jaw clenched as if fighting memories. She told herself it did not matter, love was enough, but her heart whispered it mattered more than she admitted. One evening she returned early from the market and found Rowan not at the fields but in their cottage, dressed differently, his ragged clothes replaced by a tailored suit. He was writing letters with a hand too practiced, too refined for a poor man. When he noticed her, he froze. His mask slipped for a second, and in that second Alara saw something in his eyes, not poverty, not wandering, but power, something grand, something secret. He tore the letters quickly, shoved them into a drawer, his voice calm as ever. You are home early, he said, but Alara's heart raced with a new fear. Who was her husband truly? Alara's heart pounded as she stared at him in that suit. It was as though she was seeing a different man altogether. The quiet, poor wanderer she had married vanished in an instant, replaced by someone with poise and authority. His hands, the same hands that once patched fences with roughness, now moved across expensive parchment with elegance. Rowan noticed the fear in her eyes and sighed deeply. You were not supposed to see this, Alara, he said quietly. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. What is going on? Who are you really? He hesitated, then set down his pen, his eyes fixed on hers, the stormy gray in them darker than ever. I am your husband, that has never changed, but the rest is a story I never wanted to burden you with. Burden me, she whispered. Rowan, you live like a poor man, but you write letters like a scholar, you wear suits like a nobleman, you speak like someone who has walked halls I cannot even imagine. Tell me the truth. For a long moment silence stretched, then Rowan stood tall, shedding the quiet mask he had worn since she met him. My name is not Rowan, at least not the name I was born with. I come from a family of wealth, old money and vast lands. I was heir to more than you could dream of, but with that wealth came chains, expectations, alliances, marriages arranged for power, not love. I left it all, I walked away. I refused to live in a world where love was a transaction. I became Rowan the Wanderer because I wanted to be free. Alara's lips parted in disbelief. So all this time you were never poor? I lived as poor because it was the only way to find someone who would see me for myself, not for my name, not for the fortune I carry. Her heart twisted, 1,000 emotions colliding: betrayal, wonder, fear, relief, anger, love. She did not know which to hold on to, but one thing struck deepest. You married me without telling me who you were, she whispered. Rowan's voice broke with quiet desperation. I married you because I loved you, because in your eyes I saw no greed, no ambition, only truth. I knew you once loved a man who abandoned you for wealth. I wanted you to choose me without the shadow of fortune. Tears stung her eyes. Alara turned away, her chest aching. You should have trusted me. He stepped forward, his hand gentle on her arm. Alara, I was terrified. If I told you before, would you have said yes, or would you have run from me thinking I was another Adrian the first? Could not take that risk. I would rather live as a poor man by your side than as a rich man without you. Her anger softened, but doubt still lingered. Secrets had been kept. The world she thought she knew was unraveling. The days that followed were strained. Though Rowan tried to act as before, Alara felt the shift. He disappeared often, now traveling under the guise of work. When he returned, he brought gifts, finer food, fabrics, things that betrayed the truth of his hidden life. The villagers noticed too. Whispers spread. Perhaps Rowan was not so poor after all. Perhaps Alara was not so foolish. One evening, as she sat outside watching the sunset, Rowan returned earlier than expected, his face tense. He knelt before her and took her hands. Alara, I must tell you more soon. I can no longer hide it. The world I left behind, it has found me. Fear prickled her spine. What do you mean? There are people who want me back to take the position I abandoned. They have tracked me here. I cannot keep this village life hidden forever. If you choose to stay with me, you will be thrown into that world of wealth and power, a world I never wished for you to bear. Alara searched his eyes, her heart torn. She thought of the pain Adrian's betrayal had left her, the comfort she had found in Rowan, the love that had blossomed despite the odds. She thought of the simplicity of their cottage, the laughter, the mornings shared over bread and tea. Was she ready to lose that? Was she ready to enter a world of opulence where her love would be tested not by poverty but by wealth? She whispered, what if I am not enough for that world? Rowan cupped her face with fierce tenderness. You are enough for any world, Alara. You are the only truth I have. His words melted something in her, and she realized that wealth or poverty, secrets or honesty, what mattered was the love that had never wavered. In his eyes, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. I do not care about the world you left behind. I care about the man who stood in the rain to shield me with his coat, the man who asked me to marry him without riches or promises. I care about my husband. Rowan closed his eyes, relief flooding him. He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. But fate was not gentle, not for long. The very next week, strangers arrived in the village, sleek black cars rolling through dusty streets, men in suits speaking politely but firmly, asking for Rowan. Alara watched as her husband's face hardened. He could no longer deny what he had run from. One evening he brought her to the grove where he first asked her to marry him. Alara, tomorrow I will have to face them, my family, the empire I abandoned. They will demand answers. They will demand I return. I cannot promise what will happen, but I need to know. Whatever comes, will you stand by me? Her heart hammered, but she remembered the girl she had been, broken by betrayal, drowning in shame, and she compared her to the woman she was now, stronger, braver, loved. She nodded firmly. I will stand by you, Rowan, no matter what. The next day they went together into the heart of the village. The strangers waited. An older man, stern with silver hair, stepped forward. Rowan, at last, you cannot run forever. Your father is gone. The estate needs its heir. Alara's hand tightened around her husband's. Rowan's jaw clenched. I left because I would not be caged. I built a life here, one built on truth, not contracts. The man's gaze slid to Alara, cool, calculating. And this is the woman you chose instead of alliances? Rowan's grip on her hand grew protective. Yes, this is my wife. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd, but Alara stood tall, her chin lifted. Though fear coiled in her stomach, she would not shrink, not now, not ever. The man finally said, then so be it. If you will not return, then know this, the fortune that was yours will pass, but remember, it was always your choice. He turned and left. The others followed, their cars fading down the road. Rowan exhaled heavily and turned to Alara, his eyes searching hers. I have nothing to give you now, Alara. The fortune is gone for good. All I have is this life, this cottage, this love. She smiled through her tears. Then that is more than enough, because all I ever wanted was a love that stayed. And so they remained in the village, not as poor wanderer and broken fiancé, but as husband and wife, building their life from simple joys, laughter, shared burdens, quiet nights. Though the world had tried to pull them apart, they chose each other again and again. In time the whispers faded, the villagers no longer saw Rowan as a strange wanderer but as a man who worked with honor beside his wife. Alara found peace in the very place she never expected to. She learned that wealth was not measured in coins or estates but in the constancy of the man who walked beside her, and though Rowan had once been a hidden millionaire, he was happiest when he was simply her husband. For the rest of their days she never doubted the choice she had made on that wild impossible morning when a poor man had asked her to marry him and she had said yes. Because sometimes the greatest fortune in life is not found in gold but in love that refuses to let go.